Hi class, this is your instructor Bob Durst, and we are going to dive headfirst into the immune system, that body system, that notorious system that is the bane of so many students. So let's overview. What is the immune system? What is the lymphatic system in particular? Our lymphatic system is going to be an alternative circulatory system. When most people look at the human body and think about circulation, they think of the cardiovascular system, blood moving through blood vessels being pumped by the heart. The truth of the matter is we have a separate circulatory system from the cardiovascular system made of lymphatic vessels. What moves through these lymphatic vessels? We have lymphatic fluid. Lymphatic fluid is sucked up from our body tissues. Our body tissues are surrounded or bathed in extra fluid, squishy fluid. That's why we're squishy if you poke somebody. At least I'm pretty squishy if you poke me. And this extra fluid needs to be removed. Occasionally, you'll see individuals that have excess fluid that are retaining water, and they'll tend to swell up with water weight. When that happens, the lymphatic system is not functioning properly. Within the lymphatic system, we have a specific cell type known as a lymphocyte. And these lymphocytes are essential for our immune system. So if we look at a typical immune system or lymphatic system, we're going to have, represented in green here, a bunch of secondary circulatory vessels. These lymphatic vessels, generally speaking, all converge at nodes. We have lots of lymph nodes in the groin, in the axillary region or the armpit, and also in the cervical or neck area. And these lymph nodes will, or these lymphatic vessels will dump back into the cardiovascular system at the right lymphatic duct, which empties into the right subclavian vein, or with our other duct, which empties, and I'm drawing a blank right now, excuse me, our thoracic duct, which empties into the left subclavian vein. Boop, boop, where'd my mouse go? Where'd the mouse go? So we have a right lymphatic duct into the right subclavian vein, and the thoracic duct into the left subclavian vein. Within our lymphatic vessels, we have fluid moving in one direction. This fluid is called lymph. Lymph is chemically identical to interstitial fluid. The big difference between lymphatic fluid and interstitial fluid is the physical location. Squishy liquids or liquid around the cells of our tissues or around the tissues of our body is called interstitial fluid. Once that fluid gets sucked up into a lymphatic vessel, we rename it a lymph or lymph fluid. Our lymphatic vessels are going to mirror the veins of our cardiovascular system. We have capillaries and then vessels, and those vessels merge to form larger and larger tubes. The main purpose of our lymphatic vessels is to dump lymph or excess interstitial fluid back into the cardiovascular system, where it can then be filtered and removed from the body by the kidneys and via the urinary system. The larger lymphatic vessels are very similar to the veins. They are going to have one-way valves in them and simple peristalsis and a skeletal muscle pump to help pump the fluid to them. This skeletal muscle pump that helps pump lymphatic fluid through the lymphatic system is one of the primary reasons why bed rest is not necessarily the best thing for us. It's good for us to get up and move our bodies because it helps us to circulate excess fluids through our bodies. There are two primary lymphatic organs within our bodies. These two primary lymphatic organs are the red bone marrow and the thymus. The red bone marrow is a special kind of bone marrow present within the spongy or cancellous bone tissue. We have lots of red bone marrow at the ends of our long bones within the diaphyses of our long bones, and we also have lots of red bone marrow present within the flat bones of our bodies. It's worth emphasizing that young children have more red bone marrow than older adults. And the thymus. The thymus is a special gland which wraps around the base of the trachea right above the primary bronchi, left-right primary bronchi, right behind the heart. And you would find that newborn infants have a very large thymus, and then as we age, the thymus gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's replaced with fatty, fibrous tissues. For our secondary lymphatic tissues, we have quite a few of them. They include the lymph nodes, the spleen, and then we can go into more details with prior patches, mucosal associated lymphatic tissues, the appendix, so on and so forth. But we'll focus on the big ones, the lymph nodes and the spleen. Now, there's also the tonsils, for example, but we're going to focus on the ones covered in the text. So let's talk about red bone marrow. In addition to making all red blood cells, all white blood cells are made at the red bone marrow. Now, just because the white blood cell is made at the red bone marrow doesn't necessarily mean that it will mature or reach adulthood, big air quote there, at the red bone marrow. We're going to have some of our white blood cells migrate out of the red bone marrow and mature somewhere else. For example, T lymphocytes will mature within the thymus, and most of those T lymphocytes are going to remain within the thymus. Within the red bone marrow, we are going to have B lymphocytes mature. So when you think of the B and T cells, I want you to think of T cells, thymus, B cells, or B lymphocytes, bone marrow. As we look at the lymph nodes, our lymph node is going to be a little filtering system. We will have these little filters occasionally mixed in with the lymphatic vessels. We have multiple lymphatic vessels merging or converging at the same point of location. And then there's going to be some articular tissue within the lymph node that filters the lymph, or the lymphatic fluid, as it's flowing through that lymph node. Within the lymph node, you will find lots of lymphocytes, both T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, and they are hanging out, waiting to see what gets filtered out of the lymphatic fluid. Our lymph nodes are, since they're a filter, are a site where bacterial and microorganisms or other microorganisms can be concentrated and congregated for easy location, identification, and destruction. Our spleen is a dual-purpose organ. It's in the left upper region of the abdominal cavity, right by the splenic flexure of the colon. And our spleen is a backup organ for red blood cell storage. We store extra red blood cells within our spleen, and we also are going to store extra white blood cells. We store the white blood cells within the white pulp of the spleen and the red blood cells within the red pulp of the spleen, which is a nice way of saying if you take a chunk of spleen, slice it up, and throw it underneath a microscope, some regions are bright pink and some regions are kind of white looking. The white looking regions have lots of white blood cells. The bright pink looking regions have lots of red blood cells. So, guys, gals, concept check. Which of the following is a primary lymphatic organ? We have the lymph nodes, thymus, spleen, and tonsils. Go ahead and pause this video, check your notes or your textbook, and get me an answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, the correct answer is B, thymus. The thymus is one of the primary lymphatic organs. The other primary lymphatic organ is the red bone marrow. So we have the thymus and the red bone marrow as the primary lymphatic organs. Everything else listed on the screen, the lymph nodes, the spleen, the tonsils, and some other stuff that's not listed on the screen are all secondary lymphatic organs. If you have any questions for me about the material covered here, please feel free to post them on the class discussion board, shoot me an email, or stop by my office on campus. Happy studies!